computer. Okay. Then we go back to share screen. Talk myself right through this. Which one now? Not the PowerPoint. Yes, you want the PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, you have a lot of versions.
And I don't know why.
I think we want that one. That should work too, though.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, is that full screen
Okay.
for you guys?
Yeah.
It's not full screen, but it's mostly screen.
Okay.
And then I just see Laura and Wayne, and you can't see me because I don't have a camera on my phone.
Okay, but I think in order to change that, Alona, you'd have to change your view to speaker view so that.
That's not an option for me.
Okay, so then that's what all that can happen for you.
It's fine. I've got a big screen. It's filling up. It's like it's on a big screen. It's a little picture of you guys and a big picture of the presentation, which I'm just thrilled to see because we need to know these things.
Okay, great. So then we're going to get started. Welcome everybody. And well, we're getting started late, but that's okay. It's just us chickens here. So I have this printed out for everybody, but for Wayne and Alona and Karen, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Angelina, who we have with us tonight, who's giving us a presentation called Recycle Right. And Angelina Brandt is the Director of Sustainability at the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency, where she has worked in various roles for 5 years. Prior to joining the agency, Angelina was the recycling and composting educator at Cornell Cooperative Extension in Schenectady County, where she managed the Schenectady County Recycles program. An experienced environmental science professional, Angelina holds a Bachelor's of Technology from the Department of Agricultural Engineering at SUNY Cobleskill, where she studied environmental energy technologies and waste management. She earned her associate degree in math and science from SUNY Columbia Green Community College, where she studied environmental science. In the broader materials management community, Angelina is active in stakeholder groups such as the Recycle Right New York Steering Committee, the Hudson Valley Regional Council on Materials Management, and other solid waste groups. She is an active member of the New York State Association for Reduction, Reuse, and Recycling, NYSAR 3, serving on the Organics Council, and a founding member of the DEI Committee, member of the Single-Use Plastics Committee, the Women for Recycling Committee, and the annual Organic Summit Conference Planning Committee. For 2 years, she also served on the membership of Young Professionals Committees for the U.S. Composting Council. Angie is happy to bring her passion for recycling and composting to her hometown communities, where she has been a lifelong resident of Ulster County, which says that we're in very good hands tonight with someone who knows this topic very well. So Angie, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure to spend some time with you all. So thank you, Laura, for the invitation to join your meeting and to join your conversation about recycling and waste management here in Ulster County. And it's a great privilege of mine to be able to carve out some time with you and tell you more about the work that we do at Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency, or UCRRA. And I'm really eager to hear from you guys as well about the questions that you have about local recycling. And I have prepared quite a few slides to share with you to help guide our kind of conversation here. So this is kind of our roadmap for some of the topics that I'm hoping to achieve with our time together. And I talk fast and I talk loud, so hopefully we'll get through a lot of this content. But you can see I've kind of separated it into like a 3-part series where I'll do a very brief intro with some background info about the UCRRA and our educational services. Then we'll get to the core content of this presentation to talk about how to recycle in Ulster County, how we can become a better recycler by learning some basics about universal recycling guidelines in our local recycling system. We're going to talk a lot about contamination and an industry term called wish cycling and how that affects the recycling process from start to finish. I'm hoping that through this conversation, you guys will really have a better understanding of what makes something recyclable or not, and how do we choose to be a more ethical recycler with the things that we buy and use. You'll see I do have a couple breaks for Q&A kind of sprinkled throughout this, so we'll pause there and chat about your questions before going on to a shorter segment at the end that I call Beyond the Blue Bin, which talks about odd recyclables and thinking about things that we can recover through special recycling practices. To again, just be more sustainable about our waste and the way we approach our waste. So I'm really excited to hear from you guys. In my experience with this class, it generates a lot of questions that will probably appear throughout the slideshow. So that's why I'd really like to steer us towards these kind of structured Q&As just to make the most of our time together. And for our folks joining us through Zoom, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll take your questions through the chat if we're able to as well during those Q&A breaks. And I understand this has a playback as well.
We're not seeing the chat with the way this presentation is, so
we can close out and take a peek at the chat when we get to those points, and I can kind of help us through that. But this is my game plan for you guys. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day to keep the conversation going about recycling. And I always like to start my presentations with a brief intro about UCRRA. Some of you may be more familiar with our organization than others. I have our mission statement up here on the screen, and I'm going to play a very short video clip. This is a 3-minute video that we created with some students from SUNY Ulster in their design class. We made this video during the pandemic when we couldn't have community members come in to do tours, and we wanted a way to be able to do that type of storytelling with our neighbors and show them what goes on at our facility in Kingston without them physically coming in for a tour. And I think that the students did a great job. So I'm going to give this a go, and if you have any difficulty for my folks on Zoom, we do have this video on our YouTube channel, so I can also drop this into the chat for you to play back as well.
Well, why don't we let it start for a second and see if they hear it?
Okay.
And then we'll stop it and then start it again.
The UCRRA has been proudly serving Ulster County for over 30 years with our mission, which is to protect public health and the environment and promote sustainable materials management by managing Ulster County's waste with a focus on resource conservation. And as you can imagine, that's a very tough job. There's a lot of hazards in this type of work environment. There's a lot of hazardous things that people put into the trash, but our staff here takes over 30 years with our mission to make sure that this waste is
protect public health and the environment and promote sustainability with the way that we manage our waste. There's so much more that we can do to maximize the
and
as you can imagine, that's a very tough job. There are a lot of hazards in this type of work environment. There's a lot of hazardous things that people put into the garbage. But our staff takes a lot of pride in our mission, making sure that this waste is managed in the most environmentally sound manner that it can possibly be. What you're seeing in these clips are images from our materials recovery facility in Kingston.
It's a huge environmental impact.
Every ton of recycling saves 2.7 tons of carbon dioxide emissions. So recycling is a really important component to climate smart strategy in our county. We have a lot of other programs in pursuit of this mission. We have a free electronics recycling program. We have a hazardous waste program that we also offer for free for residents who have toxic household
raw materials that can be
safely bring those
for something else, trying to get people to really
disposal. And what it is that they're doing an industrial scale compost operation that we've been managing for over 10 years now.
We're taking
through industrial scale composting, we are able to divert 5,000 tons of food scraps from the landfill every year, which is kind of a Goldilocks zone with
how it works,
composting, believe it or not, even though that's a lot of material, that's still considered pretty small scale industrial composting. But we have a lot of goals. We have a lot of vision of increasing that capacity for organics recycling. That's really the next frontier in recycling, to get people thinking about their food waste in the same way that they want to think about being responsible with their plastics. And food makes up the largest component of material in the landfill nationwide. 24% by weight is organic materials that can be recycled very simply. So
operate
we have that
a
vision at
industrial scale
UCRRA of
composting
helping move our
operation,
county
where I
move
like
in
to say
that
we've been
direction of
transforming
recovering
trash
as
to
much as
treasure
possible.
since
We've been transforming
2012.
trash into
Our
treasure
generation is
over our
definitely
last 10
going to be a
years.
key
And
player
we
to
want
moving
everyone
the
to be
dial
part of
more
that
towards
kind of vision, because
sustainability,
we
because
need your
this is our
help,
future,
right?
right?
When it gets to our
And we can make it a
facility,
really
it's too
sustainable
late.
place
It's
for
almost
future
too late,
generations.
completely too late to separate things out. So we need the public's assistance with that, and to make better choices. So thank you guys so much for watching the video despite our technical difficulties. Hopefully I wasn't talking over that audio the whole time for our folks on Zoom. I do apologize for that. Again, that video was created by a design student at SUNY Ulster. His name is Jeremy Warg. I think he did a phenomenal job. And it was a pleasure to work with him. So I always like to start with a little visual to frame our conversation. And as I mentioned, UCRRA, we've been serving Ulster County for over 30 years with our mission. We are a public benefit corporation created by the state legislature. So we're not a division of the county. We're not a county department. We're not funded by any taxpayer dollars. We're completely financially self-sustaining, and have been since we passed the flow control law here in Ulster County, 2010, I believe. So that flow control law provides that all municipal solid waste in the county has to flow into our facilities and into our care, where we then divert as much as we can, safely do so, and then export it out for final disposal at the landfill. The landfill is very, very far away, and it's been calculated that the management of our waste accounts for about 4% of the county's greenhouse gas emissions, which sounds like a small number, but that's huge. And we think we could do better. So we're up for the challenge at UCRRA, and always have a lot of fun new things and fun new visioning going on over there that I'm very excited to be a part of. And the program that I direct is our education and outreach services. So Ulster County Recycles is a county-wide community engagement program where we not only engage with residents, but also businesses, schools, landlords and multifamily dwellings. Anyone doing business here in Ulster County, we have resources for you to be more sustainable with your waste stream. And we achieve that through special events and classes like this one, doing facility tours, visiting schools with youth programming. We also offer free consultation services where we can go to a site or go to a facility and walk them through every step of their business that generates waste, and help make recommendations to reduce as much as possible. So we have free posters, recycling bin stickers, all types of technical support as well. And for residents, all of our literature is available on our website in English and Spanish. We have a wonderful recycling hotline that we staff throughout the week, so you can always call us with your questions. And I'd invite everyone to follow along with our stories on social media. We are on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and have a modest following of a newsletter that we have 5,000 subscribers, so you can stay connected with us there as well.
It's a great newsletter.
Thank you.
I always enjoy it. And one just came out.
We put a lot in there, but we don't send them constantly. We'll send them every once in a while. Okay, so let's get this going. This is what you guys all came here for. So I always like to start these recycling presentations back to the basics of why is it important to recycle correctly. So here are some of my thoughts on this. Recycling has many benefits. When we recycle, we're actually replacing the need for manufacturers to harvest virgin material from natural environments. So by using post-consumer recycled content, we are saving fuel, water, energy, lots of resources, and reducing land disturbances and reducing habitat destruction, not just for wildlife, but also for indigenous peoples. Recycling reduces environmental pollution because the manufacturing, the transportation of goods, and the disposal of goods all require fuel and a lot of infrastructure. So recycling reduces that a little bit. Recycling saves landfill space. Not everything can be reduced, reused, recovered, composted, repaired, right? So we really have to conserve the useful life of our landfill space in New York. Experts kind of disagree on how much capacity we have for the future of landfilling in New York. I mentioned Seneca Meadows, that's very, very far away. It's uncertain what the future of that landfill capacity is going to be. So it's really important that recycling helps save that landfill space for future generations, for all that stuff that we can't figure out how to deal with. And recycling creates jobs. It's estimated that there's over 750,000 recycling related jobs in America. And I have a note that this represents $36 billion in wages and almost $7 billion in tax revenue. And I've heard some recycling professionals in my industry talk about the ratio of recycling to landfill jobs. So if you were to take this can and throw it in the trash, that equates to about one job at the landfill. But if you were to take this can and put it into a recycling system, that creates 10 times more jobs by recycling that item. So it's very good for our economy. And recycling improves our communities. It's been proven that public space recycling reduces litter, which has a bad impact, right, on the people that live there and the economy of our communities. And recycling helps people be a better citizen, in my opinion, by demonstrating that care for community and environment. And it's the law, all right? So all these things are great, but it's also the law that recycling is mandatory as part of general municipal law in New York. And we have a mandatory source separation recycling law here in Ulster County as well. So recycling is great. How do we do it? There are a couple different ways to recycle in Ulster County. If you are a resident of the city of Kingston, you have a municipal curbside collection program. That is a dual stream program. Dual stream is where your paper and your cardboard is kept totally separate from your plastic, glass, and metal containers. If you use a municipal recycling drop-off center, also known as a town transfer station, that's also going to be a dual stream recycling program where you are delivering your recyclables to a central location and you're separating them out by paper products and 3D containers. And then other types of curbside collection would be to hire a hauler, hire a private company to come to your curb and collect your recycling and your trash. That is single stream recycling, which is a system where all the different types of packaging and containers are grouped together in the same container. Okay, so just a couple different options for how to recycle. All of this information is posted on our website. So if you do want to find your town transfer station or look up the list of permitted haulers, we have that all up there on our website. And I'll add that I did say permitted haulers, meaning if you operate a solid waste collection business in the county, you do have to be permitted by our agency, where we verify your recycling practices and your plan to educate your customers and understand the flow of where that recycling is going. So please reference our website for any type of contact information that you may be looking for on where and how to recycle.
Somebody joining us.
Oh, good, welcome.
Welcome. We can't see who you are, but welcome to Recycling Right.
To Recycling Right, that's right. So, so what happens though after the recyclables are collected? Recyclables are brought to a MRF, or a material recovery facility, which is essentially a recycling center where the materials are delivered, they're consolidated, and then they're sorted out by both machinery and people. And even the most sophisticated facilities have sorting line workers that touch the recyclables and participate in the sorting of materials. Even the most high-tech facilities use sanitation workers to sort by hand, and that aids the machinery in sorting effectively. And all of this sorting results in very specific categories of materials that we call commodities. So MRFs, or recycling centers, after everything's been sorted, they then compress that material into bales, shown here for easy storage, so that they can stockpile a lot of material, because you need to have probably about 50 to 60,000 pounds of one specific type of material before you can sell it in the marketplace. So there's a lot of effort that goes into sorting and stockpiling and having enough material before it can be equitable in this kind of recycling commodities marketplace. But when a MRF has enough of these bales, they bring that material into the marketplace where secondary recyclers then buy that material and further process it down into things like flakes and fibers and pellets, pulp or cullet. And these are small uniform pieces that are ideally very free of contamination and free of other types of materials. So that after that processing step, they can sell that to what I call tertiary recyclers. Those are the manufacturers that are making those, taking those raw materials and turning them into consumer goods and products and packaging. So these are some pictures of our MRF in Kingston. We operate a very small materials recovery facility that again processes dual stream recycling only, which comes to us from the city of Kingston or from the 19 town transfer stations and that network of drop centers across the county. So again, UCRRA does not process single stream recycling. Our MRF was not designed to be able to do that. And we estimate that what passes through our facility here is about 20% of the overall recycling going on in the county. So what happens to the other 80% that most people have curbside collection? And again, that is single stream recycling, which requires a separate set of machinery and technology to sort those materials once everything's been mixed together. So these are the three large single stream MRFs that are in our region. There's one in Beacon, there's one in the Albany area, and one in Half Moon. And these are all private sector facilities that are state-of-the-art facilities. I've had the pleasure of visiting those first two. I hope to get to the third one very soon. But again, these systems often have a lot more workforce, a lot more investment in the types of technology that they use, particularly a piece of technology called an optical sorter, which we do not have at our facility. So I wanted to introduce you guys to this term, wish cycling. So this is a real photo of one of our town transfer stations here in Ulster County, and all the material that sanitation worker removed from this box that somebody thought they could recycle these types of items. Most confusion with recycling comes around plastic because it's so prevalent in our lives. Almost, you count how many plastic objects you touch in a day and you lose count, right? Just because an object is made of plastic does not mean that it was designed for recyclability. And that's a hard concept for us to kind of digest the reality of that. But the reality is not every plastic object was designed for recyclability and to move through these very technical machines and enter these marketplaces where manufacturers can melt those things down and create new fibers and flakes and pellets. So this is a huge issue with wish cycling, putting the wrong items in the recycling bin and hoping that they can make their way to recycling heaven. Because when we put the wrong things into this system, it can damage the equipment significantly. More importantly, it can injure the sanitation workers that are handling our wastes. When the wrong items are mixed into this process, it ruins the value of other recyclables that would otherwise be very valuable in the recycling marketplace. And all of this makes this recycling process very inefficient and costly. An example that I like to share with people is that a couple years ago, at one of those recycling centers I just showed you, a sanitation worker lost their life because of a plastic bag, and a plastic bag was jammed inside of the equipment, and the process of trying to remove that crushed them to their death. So even a simple thing like putting a plastic bag in your recycling bin can injure people and cause very significant damage to this infrastructure. So I don't want to scare you guys and freak you out, but I just want to communicate, the true importance of recycling correctly and the conversation that we're having here today. And a very commonly wish cycled item is the clamshell. This is my favorite topic because I really like to debunk this myth with some people. So a clamshell packaging refers to two molded halves that are joined together by a hinge. So you can see all of these different types of plastic boxes that typically hold things like salad, berries, or different types of bakery domes and bakery containers. And the text on the slide says that the way a plastic container is made affects how it will behave as it's being processed for recycling. So if you look up here onto this table, I've brought some examples of some recyclable items, and I'll just show some folks on Zoom here. These types of bottles and jugs are made through a system called injection molding or blow molding, in which a stream of air is injected into a resin and expands to create the void space that the product is going to be going into the container. So again, this is a blow mold container where a stream of air is forced in and the bottle forms its shape. These types of containers are made through a different process completely called thermoforming, in which the resin is melted over a mold, and the mold is the void space that will become the packaging inside. So because these are made using a totally different process at a totally different temperature, that affects the way that these objects are going to melt down once they get turned into things like pellets, fibers, and flakes. Because these containers will chip down into smaller uniform units that can then be collected and melted again. Thermoforms pulverize into a dust or powder, which makes them very ununiform and very resistant to being molded down again and again. And we've seen a huge increase in this type of plastic manufacturing in our society over the past couple of decades. A lot of things that used to be packaged in paper are now packaged with different types of thermoforms. If you think about when you buy a toothbrush, right? And there's a piece of paper and then there's like this odd plastic that's fused over it. That's another example of like a thermoform style. So why does any of this matter? It's considered a contaminant at that end phase of plastic melting. And the market has a very low tolerance for how many of those types of containers can be mixed in with these types of bottles. It's generally 5 to 10% by weight, which is impossible to judge and guess, which is why a lot of recyclers just promote that they are not recyclable. And I can verify with you that they're not recyclable. They're not collected for recycling in our system, and they're not collected for recycling in many of the single stream processing businesses that are in operation for these exact reasons. So you can see that just because an object might be stamped with a number 1, that indicates the type of plastic, but that doesn't always indicate that it is truly acceptable for recycling. And this is a very hard conversation because we have a lot of these types of containers going on in our lives, right? They're very prevalent. But at the bottom of this slide, I try to share some tips with you for how to avoid these types of clamshells. So if you sign up for a CSA, a community supported agriculture program, where you visit a local farmer and buy your food directly from a local farmer, that often comes package free with no clamshells. You can shop at your local farmer's market for those items that commonly come in clamshells. Things like lettuce and strawberries are very easy to grow in our climate. So even if you don't have a big space for gardening, a couple window boxes or grown indoors can, all of these things can help you reduce the amount of this type of package that comes into your life. And bring your own container is the last kind of tip that is shown there. And I have a couple more slides before we break for our first Q&A. So thank you for your patience with me there. I know that one's going to generate a lot of questions. But what makes something recyclable or not is actually extremely complex. And so here are some more examples of some items that may be made of plastic, but they're not going to be processable with these other types of containers. The shape of an object. So there I have again that plastic bag or that coat hanger, which we call tanglers, because they get tangled in the gears and conveyors and machinery and cause a lot of inefficiencies in the process. Then we have the size of the object, where my example shows very small pill bottles and loose bottle caps. So if an object is smaller than the size of, say, a tennis ball or a credit card, it's very unlikely to make its way through all that machinery and all of that equipment. So for that reason, small objects should not go in your recycling bin unless they are metal and magnetic. The color of a plastic container can affect its recyclability. In this example, I show some black containers that have been dyed with black pigment. That coloring of the plastic actually affects the way it is sensed by those optical sorting pieces of equipment that I mentioned before. That's a little bit of a technical explanation, but most colors don't have limitations with the way they move through those optical sorters, except for black resins. So black resins are a very low quality resin that have a very low capture rate for that reason. I think the next one is showing weight. So in that example, there's a bunch of styrofoam blocks, right? So those are extremely lightweight. Now, technically, is there a process to recycle styrofoam chemically? Yes. Is it efficient and effective to recycle polystyrene in most systems? No, because you could fill the Hudson Valley Mall with styrofoam, and when you compress that down, remove all the air space, it will compress down to like the size of a cat. So imagine the inefficiency of trucking and storing and baling all that material for a very, very low or negative price. Another example is the composition of an object. So in that first example of a peanuts tin, you actually have 3 different materials in one container. The lid is plastic, the body of the container is paperboard, and then if you look on the bottom, it's made of tin. There's a tin ring at the bottom. So those are 3 different materials in one, right? So the recycling system was not designed to take those products apart. And then people ask me, well, what if we took them apart and put them in there?
Then you may get the size issue.
Then you may get the size issue or you know, issues with these things being very flat. So, you know, I'm not going to go through all these examples, but I hope that you can appreciate the complexities of what makes something recyclable or not. It is not the resin number that makes something recyclable. It has to be made in the correct process, the correct shape, size, color, weight. It's very, very complicated. So we're on a mission to simplify recycling for people because this is very overwhelming. But I think you guys are really interested at the level where you could use this type of insight in your back pocket to make you a better recycler. And so hopefully this is very insightful for you. And I think I have another slide that I like to show people that just kind of, again, I'm going to skip this one for now and come back to it, exemplifies how complex this industry is. For most people, when we think about recycling, we think about just putting that item in the bin and we've done our job and we walk away, and that's the end of our relationship with recycling. So that's where we are at the top, source separation. The recycling industry is actually the conglomeration of all of these different types of industries coming together. The collection industry, the technology behind sorting and processing. Then we have the marketplace where manufacturers are willing to use post-consumer resins or, you know, recycled content to make new goods. And then we have those goods going back out onto the store and people buying them. So recycling is a mixture of all these different industries that all have different challenges, between educating people about the right things that go in there, enforcement, making sure that they stay separated, safety issues with the way things are sorted. You could see some of my ideas here about quality, and overconsumption, right? People buying. Everything has to be new. It has to be, 2 years from now new. So in the middle of all these industries working together, we have a lot of challenges that are in the way of all of this system working effectively. And if one link of this chain isn't strong enough, the whole house of cards kind of falls apart, right? But the message I want to share with you is don't panic. Recycling is alive and well. We've been at it for many decades now. There's some really smart people that are, ascending to the top of this industry or near retirement in New York State that have made some really incredible improvements to the way we talk about recycling and the way we educate people about recycling. And I think, I'm really proud of our work at UCRRA to kind of pull up a chair for people and be honest with them about these challenges. So, you can join us in our opportunities in what our obstacles are. So if you're confused about recycling, you are not alone. In fact, coalition of recycling professionals called Recycle Right New York formed a couple of years ago to try to address some of these issues with people putting the wrong items in the recycling bin, because that led to fallout of the global recycling market. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, or if maybe Beyond Plastics talked about the national sword or the impact of China not accepting different plastics from around the globe. But that was because of the high levels of contamination that people were putting into their single stream recycling bin. It was almost effectively like we were just shipping our landfill trash to China and asking them to make new products out of it. And I do not blame China for coming up with a sound policy to really restrict that. But when that happened, it kind of created a panic in the media that recycling was broken and is not working, and all of this plastic's getting landfilled. So I'm on a mission to be brutally honest with the people that I talk with, because we really need your help to clean the stream and bring recycling to a much more circular system where the correct items are in there and these manufacturers can actually make new goods out of them. So no matter where you live in New York, you can visit recyclerightnewyork.org and look for your local recycling guidelines, find your local contacts for your recycling program, and they have a wonderful toolkit of social media posts and press releases and all kinds of resources for recycling professionals across the state to help simplify recycling guidelines for people. So when we go back to basics, these are some really universal things about recycling that I can tell you with a lot of confidence. You always want your containers to be empty, clean, and dry. We want to get you thinking about recycling by the shape of the container and not the number system. I want people to forget about the number system completely, because it's not very useful for most consumers to think of recycling in that way. And keeping the caps on your containers is a much more effective way of getting that plastic recycled. Because again, if a cap is loose and it's a small object, it's not going to efficiently make its way through that whole system. But if the cap is on the container, then it can be processed. Even if it's a different type of resin, it can be separated later on in the secondary and tertiary recycling streams. Flatten your boxes as much as possible. And this seems like a really simple idea, right? But when recycling enters this system, these technologies, the first thing that needs to be decided is this a 2D object, like a flat piece of paper, or is it a 3D object, like a dimensional bottle? And then those two things get separated. So when you flatten your boxes, it helps the sorting of those 2D objects correctly. And likewise, your containers should be kept in their shape. I always see people stepping on their jugs and flattening them down, and that might confuse some of these robots to think that that's a flat object. This is another big issue with the clamshells. I think you had even asked me, well, what if I cut them in half? Is that the issue? Well, no, because if you cut them in half, then the robotics and the sorting equipment's going to think that's a piece of paper, and it's going to contaminate the paper products, right? So flattened boxes, and no tanglers. Tanglers are a very, very big issue. I mentioned coat hangers and I mentioned plastic bags, but you'd be amazed with what people put in their recycling bin. We're talking garden hoses, clothing, belts, chains, ropes, wires. They think, people have the perception that if an object is metal, they want to recycle the metal, they're going to put it in their recycling bin. So please don't think that way. Don't put tanglers in there because they can whip around and really, really injure people.
Wow.
So these are some of those back to basics things. And this is our dual stream recycling guide at UCRRA. It's very colorful. We tried to make it very simple, show lots of pictures of real objects. And you can see that the guidance that we share is very oriented towards the shapes of things and not the number system. So we emphasize if it's a bottle, jug, jar, tub, which kind of has a jingle to it. I'm convinced that we can make people remember that somehow. If it's a bottle, jug, jar, tub, again, those are those types of blow molds, injection mold containers. They're very highly recyclable. If it's not a bottle, jug, jar, or tub, I would say 9 times out of 10, it's probably not recyclable or conventionally recyclable through these systems. We've talked a lot about plastic. Just to mention glass, again, that's clean bottles and jars only. So we don't want to be putting dishes and vases and mirrors and windows because we've seen it in the recycling. Again, those types of glass objects are made differently and have different compositions of sand and silicates that have different melting points that will melt down very differently and contaminate the clean glass. So glass is bottles and jars only. Metals, we have cans, lids, foil wrap, and foil tray. Those are the universal kind of categories there. And again, everything's kind of clean and dry. Mixed paper, I won't spend a lot of time there because 98% of the paper you encounter is probably very recyclable. The only exceptions there would be for single-use paper products like paper plates and paper coffee cups and paper napkins.
Because they get dirty.
And
right?
things like that. They often have a very thin coating of plastic inside the paper. It's fused to the fiber. And so that has not been innovated to effectively separate that out. Even if the cup or plate is never been used, it's still not conventionally recyclable. But paper is always good.
Angelina.
You have. And then corrugated cardboard, again, is very straightforward. And I thought I heard someone chiming in. I just have a couple more slides if you could please hold your question. Thank you. So these are some of, again, universal best practices that you cannot go wrong with. And these are really great for whether you're at work, at school, at home, at a street festival. These are the best practices. Everywhere there's a trash bin, there should be a recycling bin placed directly next to it. Always offer those options together. Recycling bins should be consistently a different color than the trash bin. So people kind of understand black is trash, blue is recycle. Now we can say green is for composting. So color coding really helps. Using very clear signage that's simple. We don't want to put a shopping list up there on top of the recycling bin, right? We want to use pictures. Pictures are good because they're great for bilingual for children. And really simple messaging. Again, bottle, jug, jar, tub. And only picking like a few things that are on the no list is also proven with behavioral science. Don't show them a big long list of no's. Show them the top 3 things that they're gonna encounter and tell them no, no, no. Making sure the bins are clean and well maintained. If you walk up to a bin and it's overflowing, right? We've all had that experience like, oh, I don't want to put this and have an avalanche, right? So I'll throw it out instead. And just having everyone know what and where to recycle, sending reminders to your coworkers or to the school about what can recycle, and sharing your success and sharing your story about the effects of all the recycling efforts, which is what I hope to do on my last slide here. This is showing you a summary from our annual waste and recycling report. So I have the great pleasure of collecting these reports from various different businesses, haulers, schools, all different types of sectors across the county have to submit a recycling report to us so we understand what they're recycling, how much of it, and where it goes. So this graph is showing you all the known recycling practices in the county, both residential and commercial. So I want to thank you guys for recycling because you're part of this. We recycled over 30,000 tons of regulated recyclable materials last year. And for comparison, we documented that we had about 118,000 tons of municipal solid waste or soft garbage. So that equates to about 21% recycling rate when you compare the regulated recycling to how much municipal solid waste was going on, which is pretty good. That's a pretty great recycling rate. It's right around average for the state. It's a little below average for the national levels, but everyone calculates their recycling rates really differently. And something that I've learned working in this industry for 7 or 8 years is that you always have to be very skeptical of when you see recycling rate numbers like that, or when you hear things like only 4% of plastic gets recycled. Exercise your critical thinking and really kind of ask some questions about that. So I hope I've provided you with a good basis for where this number came from in that fashion. And you'll see there's a lot of single stream recycling there. That's that orange piece is 32% was reported as single stream. 41% of this is recorded as corrugated cardboard. That's been separate from all the other materials. So again, if you think about like big box stores that we have here in town of Ulster, and they separate their commercial cardboard, right? And I want to point out this really small green bar, which is the dual stream recycling from UCRRA. And this doesn't capture the fiber in our stream. So this is just plastic, glass, and metal, but you can see here in my point that what comes through our care is a very, very, very small fraction of the overall recycling, but we're confident that there is a great deal of it going on. And again, that we have an understanding of where this is flowing to in the marketplace. So thank you guys for recycling. And then this is a chart for composting, which I know is not our focus for today, maybe for another meeting. I would love to come back and have this kind of similar conversation with you about composting, but we composted 26,000 tons of organic material last year. So that accounts for an 18% composting rate. So when you combine recycling and composting, that's a 33% recycling and composting rate here in Ulster County, which I'm very proud of. I'm pretty confident in these numbers, even though they are just survey responses. We have a very great ethos of recycling and composting. And I think that there's a lot that we could do to increase those numbers and divert even more. So I've been going on and on for so long now. I'm gonna take a sip of my drink and my slideshow so I can see the chat here, and I'd love to talk about your questions if we have time. How was that?
Yeah, that was great.
Okay.
So I think there's only a couple of people online, so we can just let them. I'm not a big fan of the chat thing.
That sounds good.
Stop and share. Okay.
I
So
thought we were out of hand.
I can see you
so
now.
here we
Hello.
are. So I'm going to jump in with a question just from the last statement you made.
Yes.
That composting figure was, what was it, 21%?
18%.
18%. But that doesn't take into account people like
Home composting.
myself and Regis, and I don't know if anybody, Edie composts at home. So, and we can assume that there are a lot of people
There's a lot more.
that do that. So the rate is actually higher than that, most likely.
Absolutely.
That's good news. That's great.
And again, composting is recycling's next frontier. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we've innovated our recycling system almost as far as it can go. So we need to think creatively as a society about how do we move that dial more, to divert more from the landfill. And I mean, I'm a firm believer that that is the future that's going to get us, to really minimize our landfill waste, is getting people composting.
It's a lot of
But
stuff.
there's a lot to it. There's a lot of other pieces to that puzzle, but that's a big one, I think.
Mhm.
So I'm excited for that.
I think there are some cities like San Francisco that does mostly recycling with the collection, they have recycling, and trash, they also have a thing for composting. I think there are cities out there that are doing that.
Yeah.
City of Kingston is doing it.
Is it?
Yep, they have a program, and I think we maybe want to have them in to find out what they're doing, to see if we can't get it here in the town of Ulster. Could we get a compost pile at our transfer station, you know, or something, or a way to get it to you, to your compost bin? So anybody, Ron, Patrice, you got some questions?
Oh, I have a lot of questions.
Yes.
But I don't want to hog the questions. You kind of answered one of my questions was leave the lids on.
Yes.
Um,
There's one exception to that, so I'm glad you brought the question up. The question for folks on Zoom was about leaving the caps and lids on. So if the container is plastic and the lid is plastic, you should leave them together.
okay.
Okay, so here I have a glass jar with a metal lid. So if the materials are different, you want to separate them, because this lid will be moved with a magnet and removed that way. So it doesn't matter if it's a small lid. So even small lids that come on like a cat food can or a soup can, those can be recycled loose as well.
Okay.
So just remember, if it's plastic on plastic, keep them together. If they're two different materials, take them apart.
So that lid.
Does that make sense?
And the small lid like that can be recycled?
The metal lid?
Even though it's a small item?
Yes, because
What about a
the
plastic?
metal objects are removed magnetically with an eddy current separator. So they use a magnetic field to pull those out. So it doesn't matter for metal if that is a very small lid.
So then, just keeping on the lid topic, I'm sorry to jump in here, but like you have, that was obviously a spray bottle.
Yes.
That you have that out, and that also, like a hand pump, like for hand soap.
Yes.
Those things.
If it has a pump, squirt, nozzle, or any type of lid like that, that you should remove and discard, because that is a composite object where there's a metal spring inside,
Exactly.
there's a metal tube inside, there's multiple different types of resins used in that. So that's why I have this example to show people that that's an example where that's not like a cap or a lid, that's a squirt nozzle. So you should remove that and discard it, or reuse the container, which I do.
So your soup can and your glass jar paper coverings, those get removed?
Great question. So someone asked about removing the labels on different things. And for most of the time, you do not have to remove the labels. So I have a glass jar, I have a metal can, they have the labels on. The examples that I brought that I've removed the labels, I'll just show here, this and this. I took the labels off because the ratio that the label covers up the plastic on these types of containers is very big, right? The labels on these types of containers
They're wrapped,
are
basically.
very, very big. They're completely encased in the label. And so if you recycle single stream, that label can actually affect the optical sorter when it goes to read these containers, which I don't want to get too technical and confuse you by going into detail, unless you guys are curious about the optical sorting thing. But in general, you don't have to remove labels unless it's encasing the entire container completely.
Oh, so the soup can is encased in the entire, the label on the soup can encases the entire can.
Yep, but the metal can's removed magnetically, so that's not an issue. This is typically sorted with optical sorters with plastics, but that's a very good catch. And I love that there's always all these like nuances. It's like, well, most of the time it's this, but then sometimes it's that. And it's like, that's what adds to all the confusion about,
Too many things.
about what to do.
People recycle a lot.
Yeah.
This is way beyond what I thought recycling was, so I'm sure that I'm not the only one who has thrown things away that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the lids from a pull top, a metal can, like a cat food can, dog food can.
That's very recyclable. Yep.
And also the can that you, a can opener that you open and you have the disc then, that
Yes.
disc also can go in?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Okay.
Metal cans, whether they're for food or beverages, very,
the
very
lids also.
recyclable. The lids also.
Okay.
Also, I have a piece of foil in my example here. I don't know if you guys saw that, or if it's hidden away, but you can see that I balled this up like this. So this is how you should try to recycle your foil. If it's balled up, again, larger than the size of a tennis ball, that's going to be way more effective at moving through all these conveyors and machinery. If you, sometimes it's kind of like you want to fold it up like a piece of paper, but again, that machine is going to think that that's a flat object and move it into the paper rather than the way it will move through this system if it's balled up like this.
So then also, if you only have a small piece, you should hold on to it.
You
until
squirrel
you
it
make
away.
A bigger one.
Squirrel it
and-
away,
yeah.
make a big one, yeah.
Uh-huh. Oh, interesting.
And that brings me to, especially with tin foil, how clean is clean? Like, most things you can rinse out pretty easy, like I had an olive oil bottle the other day and I rinsed it, but I know there's still olive oil in it. I mean, do I need to put soap in that and soap it up and clean it out so it's totally clean? Or is just rinsing it with water and leaving the lid off so it dries good enough? And with tin foil, most tin foil, if it's clean, like I just covered something, but if I bake something in it, I usually throw it out because it just seems like I'm using too much water to clean it. It's like cleaning a plastic peanut butter jar. Where do you lose the
benefits of it, yeah.
I'm wasting a gallon or 2 gallons of water cleaning the peanut butter out of the plastic, or the glass.
Your thinking is very correct with everything that you just said. The containers should be clean and like free of residue. So you shouldn't put this with 2 inches of milk still in it, right, into your recycling bin. A good quick rinse is fine. And a lot of that is for your pleasure as well, because your recycling bin is going to get stinky from all the cat food I have a lot of cats, so
Yeah.
all the cat food cans piling up is going to be unpleasant, and then nobody's going to want to recycle, right? So rinse clean for your pleasure, empty so that there's no liquids in there. And then, yeah, your thinking is very, very correct with the foil. If it is saturated with lasagna, cheese, right? Nobody wants that. If you can, rip that piece out and recycle the rest of it, like that's even better. Those foil pie trays and stuff like that, again, if they're just relatively clean and they don't have like lasagna caked on there, that's perfectly fine to recycle. And again, those you can also kind of crumple up as much as you can to bulk them up a little bit more. Does that help?
Yes.
You're doing it. And
I'm trying to shift from plastic to glass. Like plastic is dead. I'm assuming glass is a little bit better, but it's hard to get plastic out of your life.
it
Very
is.
hard.
It's a hard thing, and I just want to know what's the best. Do I need to run through my dishwasher? Apparently not.
I've heard of people who do that. And you mentioned a peanut butter jar, so I wanted to do a quick little story that somebody once shared a really great idea with me, that when they're down to the bottom of their peanut butter, they put like sesame oil and soy sauce in it and shake it up really hard, and they make a peanut sauce. And then that helps clean the container. And then you can
Then you
recycle
rinse-
your food waste by turning it into something new. And I thought that that was really savvy that they did that. But with some containers, like mayonnaise is another one that's hard to clean, just use hot water. As you're using hot water, fill it up, put the cap on, shake it like heck, get your frustrations out, and you'd be amazed how clean you can get it just by shaking it with hot soapy water inside. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, it is hard to kind of make those choices. But now that you know what types of shapes are really recyclable, trying to choose those when you can, avoiding other plastics when you can. All the single-use stuff, forks, straws, bags. I brought reusable stuff for everybody so that you can go home and put that into practice. But I always tell people there's so much climate anxiety is a phrase that we're hearing now. People feeling really overwhelmed by climate change and very overwhelmed by plastic pollution. And we try not to add to that when we're educating people about wish cycling. It's not like, oh, you've been doing it wrong all along. It's that we really want to get this steered towards a more circular economy, towards a better, cleaner recycling system. So if you're doing, those things well, and you occasionally are at the fair and you buy a clamshell thing or something, don't beat yourself up, because, it's all part of the ecosystem of your lives. And some people get very, very diehard about zero waste, and I think that that's great. But we don't need everyone doing zero waste perfectly, right? Because that's a lot of pressure and that's really hard to do. We need everybody just trying to do a little bit of these things at a time. And when you've got this down, maybe now you try composting and you get that down. And then next year, maybe you find another thing, you find a repair cafe. And then the next year you eliminate one thing that you buy all the time and you learn how to make it your own. It's all about just adding to those little things. And I think that that really makes a big difference when everyone's doing all those little things. It adds up, it adds up. So it sounds like you guys are doing it.
And Wayne, I see, has a question.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It's very helpful. It seems to me that people doing the things that you're talking about and trying to do them well, it's really important. But it seems like to me there's two things that, if they don't happen, will sort of always make this recycling kind of a band-aid. One is that there are a whole group of people who are just never going to recycle, who just don't care. So they're going to have that drink out of a plastic water bottle or whatever, 5 of them on a hot day, and just throw them in the garbage or throw them on the ground. But if they even throw them in the garbage, they're never going to recycle. And then if you don't stop the use of single-use plastics, especially the ones that aren't recyclable, like the clamshells, they're everywhere. So why can't we stop them from being manufactured? Just like we did with plastic bags. No, you cannot sell single-use plastics that are not recyclable. I mean, it seems to me if you don't get to that point, then all you're doing is you kind of have your finger in the dike. You're just trying to slow it down, but you're never really going to address it. What do you think?
I really appreciate that. I think that the lost R, reduce, reuse, recycle, that lost R is regulate. And we do need to regulate these industries that are creating very wasteful systems. And there's a lot of people working on this in New York State specifically. Some of those committees that I volunteer on, there's a lot of discussion about what's called EPR, or extended producer responsibility. Did you guys talk about that with Beyond Plastics? So a very easy example of this is the bottle bill, where you buy.
We did talk about those two bills.
You buy products, right? There's a surcharge on the product and you get that money back if you recycle it, right? So that is a form of product stewardship, or EPR. extended producer responsibility. So there's a lot of discussion in the state about creating EPR for various types of packaging, which would put a surcharge or a tax on different types of packaging. And that funding would go to support the recycling infrastructure, to build out recycling programs for those products and reimburse municipalities. Oftentimes it's the taxpayers that end up paying for these recycling systems in communities across New York State. Even though that's not how we're set up in Ulster County, that's still a huge issue in our state, that taxpayers are pouring all of this money into recycling programs that are struggling, right? So if we had EPR on more types of packaging, it would force manufacturers to use more post-consumer recycled content to make their products from more recycled material, or use content that is sustainably forested paper sources, or design it with more recyclability in mind. And I think it's a really important piece of this policy framework for how to make recycling more sustainable. And for objects and packaging that's not recyclable and will never be designed for recyclability, those manufacturers should be paying a heck of a lot more to support the recycling infrastructure.
Or just.
So I agree with everything that you're saying, Wayne, and I think there's a lot of room for policy. Specifically with clamshells, it is very complex to regulate something like that, because they're not manufactured in the state, right? There's no plastic manufacturing that's in New York State. That is a huge undertaking at the federal and international level to regulate something like that.
Could you say that, could you regulate the use of them, even if you
That they
can't?
can't be distributed.
Saying that you cannot be used, they can't be used in New York State.
Yeah, yeah, or distributed, or make them be certified compostable product, or, even if we were speaking before the class about even just using a foil product instead of a plastic clamshell, like those foil circular pans that you get, sometimes you get Italian food, like,
And it's
something like
cardboard on
that
top.
with cardboard on top is even a better plastic-free choice. So I agree with everything that you said. It's a really complex moving target of who's responsible for big oil and big plastic, and I think that
And it's all big money.
there's more policy work that could happen to further restrict that funnel, so that it's not this big at the top, and maybe it's a smaller supply chain. But
This is Alona, and I'm very surprised that you didn't talk about the health dangers of plastic. That's something else that could be added into the conversation. I mean, I use glass bottles of water that I refill with my own, my own distilled water. I make my own yogurt, and for the most part, and to me, I felt terribly guilty when I bought 3 boxes of freezer bags. Twice a year, I renew my freezer bags instead of washing them out. I'm just so shocked at the at the lack of. Yeah, I know. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I get so upset by this, because the health question. I mean, these things cause cancer. They over estrogenize. It over estrogenizes men and women. I know why. One of the reasons, of course, Wayne accepted, a lot of men are so crazy today. They have bigger boobs than women do, because they have so much estrogen from the plastics that we eat. I mean, how can this go on? All right, sorry, Rando.
don't apologize. I think you made a really great point there, and thank you for bringing that into the conversation. We do have some content that we share with people about the health effects of plastic. That's under a slightly different class topic, and I came into this program knowing that you'd already heard from Beyond Plastics, and that was probably already
And they did
covered
talk
in
about
some
that.
depth. But I agree with you, and I think that it is very alarming at the level of scientific evidence that shows not just BPA, but PFAS and other types of resins that are extremely extremely dangerous for public health. So I appreciate that you brought that up for our conversation, but I understood that you touched on that in a previous session, so I didn't want to touch it again.
I do have a question about the Constitution. If we were to try to ban it now, so we've done stuff with plastic straws, we've done stuff with plastic bags. Would there be, at what point does it run afoul of the federal government's right to regulate interstate commerce if we tried to ban this stuff?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I don't presume to have all the answers for certain policy questions like that, but I know that there's definitely going to be a lot of lobbying from, the Grocers Association and different types of unions that work in food service, because as much as we hate plastic and we understand that it's a terrible thing, plastic also has some really important uses in our society. And that's a controversial idea I'll throw out there, but look at the pandemic and look at the necessity and the innovation that we've had in our healthcare industry because of single-use plastics that have kept people safer in hospitals and things like that and kept things more sanitary. That's one little thing I'll throw out there, knowing it's a very controversial idea here. But the grocers associations and the food industry is going to have a lot of pushback with an idea like that, the more food is packaged, the more it can protect sanitation and foodborne illnesses and food going to waste. Because if food is packaged very thoroughly, right, then arguably it can also reduce food spoilage, which is a whole nother issue, right, of composting. So I think you have a great question. I think it will be very tricky to regulate something like that on a federal level, but that's not to say that there aren't people that are really working on those types of questions right now. So
how can we find out? What can we do to find out who's working on it, and like what if we should be talking to our state reps or who we should be writing to?
Yeah,
Like
your
what's our action?
state senator. I mentioned earlier NYSAR, which is the New York State Association for Reduction, Reuse, and Recycling, and they have a whole legislative committee in that organization that probably has some information on their website, or I can connect you with someone to learn more about where their dial is moving right now in New York. Yeah, that wouldn't hurt. I can follow up with that. There's
How do
also
you
the
spell,
New York
how do you spell
State.
NYSAR, please?
It's NYSAR.
It's a single R. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's also the New York State Product Stewardship Council. You can Google that. It's a long name, but they're also working on those types of lobbying to the state about EPR and creating that type of circular economy for packaging. So that's another great resource to look into and to get more involved in. Great questions, Ilona. Thank you.
And we're looking at 8:27. You have another section here to go through?
I can speed through a couple slides if you guys are
Yeah.
into it. I
Is
don't want to
everybody-
keep you going for too long.
Another 15 minutes? Everybody? Okay. Wayne, you guys are okay for 15 minutes? Okay.
And I think you have a copy of my slides now too. So you can also share if I breeze over a couple ones really quickly, if that's okay. And yeah, I'm happy to jump in and show
okay,
you a
so we
couple
got-
more. Can you pull that?
We're gonna
back down?
share that
Any
again.
more questions?
Yes.
Jesus already.
I'm like,
Okay. So wait, we want to go back.
Yeah.
Here we want to share. Something is wrong here where I'm not seeing my bottom. I don't know why I'm not.
The green, the green one.
Share. Okay.
We'll get
And-
through that.
Yeah, thank you. Here we are, back.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay, and invite everyone to take a nice big stretch as we plow through our next few minutes It's always good to move around a little bit, right?
It's chilly in here, isn't it?
So-
I'm gonna get a scarf.
Okay. So this second section is going to kind of expand on our conversation a little bit more and look at some special ways of recycling beyond the blue bin. Because as you can see from this chart, the waste management hierarchy, recycling's at the bottom of the totem pole here. Recycling's one of the last few things that we should be doing to be more sustainable with our waste, right? The most effective way is to be at the top of this hierarchy by reducing our generation of materials, and that includes reducing the amount that we recycle. And that's also kind of a controversial concept for some people, but recycling still is limited, right? When these things get recycled into new products, they're often downcycled into things that are then no longer recyclable, right? Like bottles become clothing and carpeting and things like that, or jugs become children's toys and pink flamingos, right? So that's downcycling. It's great that it's replacing virgin material, but recycling is still an end solution. So we have to be up at the top of these choices. And there's a lot of choices that we can make to reduce the amount that we generate and have to recycle. So, being mindful of our consumption and our relationship to things is what's really going to help us transform our circular economy. And this is my kind of take on the R's. There's way more than 3 R's. There's at least 7. We add regulate in there. We've got 8 R's, and I bet we could come up with some more. But I want to talk to you about reuse. Donating items that are still in good condition not only extends the useful life of things, it helps our neighbors in need, supports local organizations that have a charitable mission, and diverts solid waste. So this is very important, not only to donate your items that are still in usable condition, but to seek out purchasing gently used items as well is part of being a more sustainable shopper, a more eco-friendly shopper. And holiday season's right around the corner. And, I say buying things secondhand, buying gently used items, buying vintage things, it's becoming more trendy again. And I love to see that. Because it's very sustainable. So I encourage you guys to think outside the box. If you have something that you need to get rid of and it's not working at your yard sale, we have a whole list of reuse organizations on our website, including Habitat for Humanity, which will come and pick up donations for free and give you a receipt so you can claim it on your taxes that you donated to a charitable organization. What a great concept if you have bulky furniture, a lot of old items that you want to get rid of. So please take advantage of that. We also have People's Place, we have Salvation Army, right? We have different types of religious organizations that have shelter programs. There's Family of Woodstock, the list goes on and on. There's so many opportunities to get rid of things kind of in a more sustainable way through this and seeking them out as well. For items that are no longer working, I want to make sure that you guys know about Repair Cafe, which is a community-driven series of events where your broken but beloved items are fixed for free by expert repair coaches who are also your neighbors. So these are pop-up events that go on across the Hudson Valley, where you can bring 1 or 2 items at a time. And the list of acceptable items ranges from tools to clocks to jewelry, sewing, bike repair, electronic repair. There's also sometimes these cafes have like tech repair to teach people how to, clean their devices and clean their cell phones and stuff like that. So this is a great program that we have a very robust infrastructure in Ulster County of repair cafes. So you can also find them on our website along with a list of businesses that offer appliance repair, computer repair, bike repair. We have put all those resources together for you on our website. Another item that's kind of a forgotten recyclable is our clothing. And each New Yorker generates about 72 pounds of clothing waste a year, clothing and fabric waste per year. And this is like the 3rd largest component of all landfilled waste in New York State is fabric. And when we throw away fabric, we're also throwing away all of those natural resources that went into growing and sustaining those fibers or animals that made our clothing. So I encourage you guys to not just donate usable clothing, but recycle your clothing that is gently worn, even if it has stains or it's missing a button or has a broken zipper or it's only one shoe. Those items can still be recycled. If you visit NYSAR's website here or just Google Recloth New York, that will generate a find a location near you database where you type in your zip code and it will show you those clothing and shoe donation bins that have been verified for their recycling practices. And there's a pretty good value of fabric in New York. It's about 3 to 5 cents per pound. So sometimes people feel bad about putting damaged clothing or clothing that's out of style into those bins, but those organizations that sponsor those bins get a few cents per pound to recycle it. And it gets turned into some really great things like insulation, carpeting, different fibers for pet beds, and industrial wiping rags. So this type of recycling is alive and well, and most people don't realize that they can recycle their clothing this way. So take advantage of that. And another type of beyond the bin recycling is film plastic recycling. We talked about plastic bags, but there are all different types of these soft, flexible plastic bag-like materials that can be recovered if separated from your recycling and brought back to a grocery store. And this is protected by law in New York State. You have it up here on the slide. Any store that has 5 or more locations or is 5,000 square feet of retail space or more is still required to collect these bags, even though we've banned plastic bags. So I want to make that very clear. The most convenient place to bring these is to your local grocery store where they have bottle and can redemption. You'll see they have a big bin for film plastic recycling. And like you can see on the slide, this is case wrap for paper towels, toilet paper, cases of water, small sandwich baggies, your traditional old handle bags, newspaper bags, bubble wrap, bread bags, air pillows, even things like the insert that comes in a box of cereal or the insert that comes in a box of crackers. Those are all these types of film plastics that I'm talking about. And if you're ever not sure, you can do the stretch test, which is you take a plastic bag. Here's one for tortilla chips, soft tortilla shells, right? And if you pull on the bag and it starts to kind of give way like that and it's stretchy, then it's 9 times out of 10 a bag that can go into these types of systems. But if you pull on the bag and it doesn't give way, for example, like a potato chip bag, you can't stretch like that, then it's not the same type of material. So I encourage you guys to do this type of recycling. You will be amazed once you start collecting these, how many you really have. Bags and bags and bags. I bring one every week that I go grocery shopping. And again, these are still required to, by law, DEC does enforce this law, but you could read more about it on the page link there by visiting our website. Here's something from the Recycle Right New York campaign to show people, please don't jam us up and don't put these in your recycling bin, because this is what happens. And this is a machinery that's all gunked up because of that plastic bag recycling. And I'm moving quickly through this. If anyone has questions about electronics, please bring them to us. We have a free electronics recycling program every Saturday from 8 to 2 at our facility in Kingston. Again, it's free. We accept all products covered under the New York State electronics recycling law. You may also bring them to your local transfer station if they accept them, or to any of these local businesses. I know we don't have Best Buy or Radio Shack anymore. This one's kind of an old slide, but Hudson River Technologies, Staples, Brainstorm Computers. Even if you can't make it to us on a Saturday, there's lots of options. For battery recycling, specifically rechargeable batteries are covered under a New York State law that went into effect in 2010. Again, rechargeable batteries are required to be collected by any business that would sell rechargeable batteries. So I have some logos here on this slide of some local locations that have very robust recycling programs for this. Go to Target, go to Staples, go wherever you shop for rechargeable batteries and just ask to speak with the customer service person, and they will know what you're talking about, because this has been in effect for a very long time, this Rechargeable Battery Act.
Does that include, I don't see you have large ones like a lithium ion, is that included in that deal?
Large batteries,
like
for
or-
power tools.
Yeah,
Power tools, go back to Lowe's or Home Depot. They have a take back program
So
for
the
the
battery.
power tool batteries. Yeah.
okay.
So then there's alkaline batteries that are not covered under the New York State battery recycling law. These are much harder to find drop-off locations. You can participate in a mail back program, but that's very expensive. I happen to know locally that the local Target store and the Staples store will accept alkaline batteries. But as you can see, that's a little bit more limited because they are not classified as hazardous waste anymore, according to New York State DEC, and they're not covered under the law. But there are still a couple options for where to bring those. Speaking of laws, a new law passed in New York State in 2022 that created a paint care program, whereby all of these locations participate in paint collection, free paint collection, where the paint is recycled into like a recycled chalkboard paint, or it can be recycled for waste energy for fuel in oil-based paints. So this is a free safe disposal program. Residents can bring anywhere from 5 to 10 gallons per day to any of these participating paint care locations. And paint just has to be in its original labeled container. So this is a great opportunity. We also accept paint at our special hazardous waste collection events. We collected 50,000 pounds of paint last year when this program launched. So we're very excited to capture as much paint as possible. Each of these locations do about 10,000 pounds of paint a year, and that's just in the first year. And the list is continuing to grow. So anytime you need to refer to this, just Google Paint Care NY and it'll take you right to the list, or it's also available on our website. So this is just showing you on our website, the home screen right here in the top right-hand corner. You see that big green button? That's our Recyclopedia. And we have over 150 items listed there on our website with local recycling guidelines. So while I've highlighted a couple of my top few beyond the bin items here, please take advantage of this resource or give us a call if it's during business hours, and we'll walk you through the options. But again, we have over 150 items here with local recycling resources and guidelines for what to do with various things, including, is it recyclable in your blue bin? So here are my closing thoughts on how we can kind of transform some of these behaviors that we have to be more sustainable when buying something new. You can kind of have this little checklist in mind. Do I really need this, right? How am I going to use it? How is it made? How long will it last? Does it put my family's health in danger? Is it reusable? Can it be recycled at the end? Can I find this secondhand instead of buying it new? Or do I already have something that could achieve this same task? So I know these are a lot of questions to keep in mind, but this is the type of way of thinking that will help us become more sustainable shoppers when we're making better choices with waste in mind. And then when you're getting rid of something old, again, ask yourself, is it recyclable? Is it still usable? Can I donate it or give it away to someone else? Is it valuable as scrap metal? Does it still work? Can it be repaired? Can it be exchanged when I go buy a new one? Or does it require special disposal to safely discard it? So I hope that this time together has been really insightful and helpful for you guys, not only to know what's going on with recycling and how to be a better recycler, but how to really transform our way of thinking about these objects that we invite into our lives. And sometimes we use for only a few minutes before they're discarded in landfill forever and ever. So I'm really energized to do this work on behalf of the agency and with my colleague Tanisha, who couldn't be here to join us, but we encourage you guys to think outside the box, and together we can really rethink our waste stream and really transform the culture of waste here in Ulster County. We have a lot of potential, and I'm so grateful for this time to meet you guys. A lot of new faces for me tonight, so I really enjoy that.
Well, we're grateful you were here. That was amazing.
Oh, thank you. I'll end the slideshow now for
Here, we can stop
some closing
sharing.
Q&A with you guys. And I'll take any questions if it's about the content that I just shared or about recycling. We'll expand back on that, or even you know, any questions about the agency. I'm happy to take a shot at. So what do you guys got for me?
I have a big question.
Okay.
Solar panels. I feel like they're the plastic of our generation because I drive by these solar farms. I'm not even gonna go into using prime farmland, but I look at these solar panels. We're probably 20 years out from when this started, and I think they say the life of a solar panel is 20 to 25 years. And are they recyclable? Are these manufacturers of solar panels making an effort to make them recyclable, or are we gonna be choking landfills with these panels? Because they talk about how the technology is improving, so even though the panel might have a lifespan of 20 or 25 years, after 15 years, it's old technology. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, and is anybody doing anything about this? Or are we going to be choking on them in 5 to 10 years like we're choking on plastic now?
Great question. I really appreciate that question because we're choking on them right now. It's not
Okay.
5 years from now. No one knows how we're going to be recycling photovoltaic cells, and it's a huge issue. It's a huge issue because they do contain precious metals that could be recovered and recycled, and they contain toxic materials in the way that they have been manufactured historically. I occasionally do hear some buzz about this. I'm sorry that I'm not prepared to speak more eloquently on the status of it right now, but I do know that there is discussion in the state about product stewardship of solar panels and making the manufacturers and the suppliers of these products responsible to fund and research immediately, like 2 years ago, to figure out a way to recycle them. And your question is really important to me too, because this is actually an issue that got me interested to study waste management. Because you read my bio in the beginning of the talk, but when I first started going to college and studying environmental science, I wanted to study photovoltaic energy because I thought that the wave of the future of sustainability was solar power. And as I got involved in my academic career, and I started to learn that even the most sustainable things that we think we're doing right now all generate waste. Everything that we do generates waste, you know, and now we're buying electric cars that have very complex batteries that no one knows how to recycle, and they're extremely toxic. So I kind of had a revelation in college where I was like, I have the right idea, but I'm on the wrong bus, because I need to be on the bus that's dealing with how we're going to deal with this waste. So that's my little soapbox. Everything that we do comes back to waste, and I think that's a really important question that needs to be looked at very, very closely. And I'm sorry that I'm not completely up to speed on where that lies right now, but I know that there's some conversations going on there. Right, we need to figure that out like 5 years ago, because they're ending up in the landfill now. They are.
Yeah, because I was wondering, I was thinking about that what do you do with them? And I also think to myself, companies go out of business. So, is there any bonding maybe to force a company to, when the 20-year lease is up and now Farmer John is left with, 20 acres of solar panels he doesn't know what to do with, I don't know, but, all right, I'll ask you next year when you come back and.
Give me some time to brush up on that.
That's kind of a very different topic in a way, because we're talking, the focus here was household things, but maybe that's another thing that we have a discussion on, are these bigger issues of, I always think about all these buildings that come down and then they rebuild, and all of that waste you know, that happens. Are we going to continue to do that? You know, and look at the issue we had over here with the asbestos. You know, I know we're not using asbestos now to build things, but there's still plenty of buildings that have that in it.
Yeah.
And we just keep tearing things down and building them new.
Yeah.
You know, they say that, you know, here in the town of Ulster, we don't refill our stores. You know, we have a lot of dark stores,
Yeah.
and because it's cheaper to build new than to remodel or repurpose the existing structure. Well, I say to that, tough shit.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we're gonna build another building while next door to something that's empty. We've got to rethink that.
Yeah.
You know, because now there's another building that's gonna come down at some point, and all of that waste. So, sorry, I got on my soapbox.
I love it. No, I love it. And if you're interested, seriously, if you're interested to get an expert in here, I'd love to connect you with the Product Stewardship
That would be an
Council.
interesting
Because,
topic.
yeah, it'd be interesting to hear from them on the progress that they've made with that.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's.
Very
it's-
important.
It's a concern that, you know, every town, because I think the town has something before them right now about a solar farm or some, thinking of something cool. But,
And we've, just to expand on that too, like we've innovated so many new emerging technologies that are mixing so many things together, right? I mean, I don't know anyone that has a smart refrigerator, but you guys have seen the refrigerators that like you can see inside the fridge, and it's got a computer on the door. So now you have a Freon containing device with lithium ion batteries and electronic waste, and it's 3 different things in one,
How do
and
you
no
get
one's
rid of
prepared
that?
to do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or I know a really big issue in New York City are these e-bikes,
yes.
you know, which again is a very eco-friendly thing and a very great intention that more people really should be commuting that way and being transported that way. However, these bikes contain lithium batteries that are causing fires, and even the fire departments in New York City are just totally abashed with what to do and how to guide residents with these types of materials. So there's a fine line between innovating new technologies and moving us into this like new digital age, and kind of keeping the pulse on the solid waste infrastructure so that we can keep up with it. And unfortunately, bring it back to, you know, recycling. That's what's happened with the plastics industry, because the recycling infrastructure itself has changed very little since the 70s when we started recycling, right? And that's why when you look at my show and tell pile, it's the same same thing, right? Bottles, jugs, cans, paper, right? Because the technology is not, you know, innovated. It's the same system, but what has changed is the proliferation of all this plastic that's out in the world today. That's really confusing people because they feel guilty and they do want to recycle it. And I completely agree with that, and I understand it. But yeah, we can't innovate faster than we have the models to actually deal with it. So don't put the cart before the horse. It's worth those hard questions, figuring that stuff out. And I also am very pro solar, by the way. I do think it's a very good thing, but I did change my major halfway through my degree program. Like, I'm on the wrong bus. I want to be on that bus, you know?
So,
Great
getting
question.
back to plastics, just a quick question, because we did have the other Beyond Plastics came, and when I left that, you know, meeting, I thought it was just ones and twos, like, that's what I left with in my head, that the only thing recyclable is ones and twos, but you're saying, no, think about the shape
Yes.
as opposed to the number on the bottom.
And that's much easier.
They have a slightly different message, right? And I understand that message of thinking of ones and twos. But as you saw from my presentation, that's not enough. You can't simplify recycling that way. Because again, it has to be the right shape, size, color, weight. Like, is it going to move through the machinery? Is it not going to injure anybody? Is there someone out there that's going to buy it? So everything has a plastic number on it. If you go home and you look at your pink flamingo, it's probably a number 1. And that's what's causing this confusion about, I'm not saying, you know, Judith is causing the confusion, but there's some truth to what they say. you know, if we focus on, you know, behind the big curtain, if we look at bottles, jugs, jars, and tubs, they're mostly ones, twos, fives, right? So there is some truth to that, but I think that the messaging could be tweaked a little bit more, because this is a simpler way, I think, of getting people to remember that.
Yeah, and what you had up here, is there a little card introduced back here that's got the pictures of the bottles, jugs, jars?
Oh yeah, I brought all
Okay.
kinds of fun
Okay.
stuff. Please browse some of our media and some of our swag that we brought, and I'd love to leave you with some for your members that joined and
Yeah.
for anyone who's interested in that.
I'd like to know who Linda is. You came in late, and I'm not commenting on that. I'm very glad that you're here, but just would like to know who you are.
Hi, I'm Linda Resnick.
That's
Hi,
what
Laura.
I thought.
Hi,
Linda.
Angelina.
Hi, Linda.
Hello.
Nice to hear you.
Very nice. So, Ilona and Linda, would you like me to make you a bag of swag here, and I'll have it for you?
No, that's okay. I've got some posters at home I use. They're on my refrigerator.
Okay. Well, there's other things. There's bags. There's
We have reusable
vegetable bags,
straws.
reusable
We
straws.
have insulated mugs that are plastic.
Yeah, I would love some.
Okay, I'll make you each a bag, and Wayne and Karen also, and I will have it. You guys can contact me. And then that means we have to see each other in person, which is never a bad thing. So,
Oh, you go to,
Thank you,
Adam.
Laura.
Yep.
no problem. I'm glad you were here, Linda. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have
go
a
to
real
Adam?
quick story
Uh-huh.
about Angelina. I have a story about Angelina. Do we have a minute?
Sure.
Well, a few weeks ago, my husband and I were confronted, terrified by a swollen cell phone battery that we were told is very dangerous. It hadn't yet leaked, and we were all upset, and we called UCRRA. Angelina picked up the phone, walked us through a way to get it to her facility, which we did on Sunday. And we're very grateful. And she does a great job, guys. She's really smart and really good.
Well, yes, we know that after tonight.
It just made my day. Thank you, Linda. And thank you for doing the right thing and reaching out to us. And I'm glad we got that taken care of for you.
That was good thinking, Linda.
Once
Very
in a
good.
while. Once in a while.
So sweet. Oh,
All right,
thank
so
you.
I'll make you each a bag, and let's be in touch, and we'll figure out how we can meet to get it to you. All right.
Great, thank you.
All right, we're gonna say goodnight on Zoom land, and I thank you for being here, and thank you, Angelina, very much.
Absolutely.
This was great.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Really great.
guys.
Very enlightening.